there, Justin. I had you on mute, I guess. I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I didn't even hear the thing go.
That's all right.
What do I call you? STL? Justin? What do you want to be called?
Either one works good.
Seems weird to say Justin to me, that's all.
You can call me STL. It's depends on the person, I guess. Some do, some don't.
All right, you guys ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right. Let me make sure this feed's going real quick.
I'll let you take the lead there, STL.
That'd be fine.
All right, I'm leaving the call.
3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Grinders Live, brought to you by DraftKings. On this wonderful 4th of July, we're bringing you one show today. Hopefully gets you ready for your lineups tonight. Just a minor word of caution. Some sites are using the 6:40 starting time with the game in San Diego. Other sites included that in their early set. So we can give you a few plays from that game during the show, but just be aware, I know FanDuel especially, if you're playing over there, you got the 6:40 lock time. So that will come up quickly here at the end of the show. With me tonight, we've got Pepsi 7. Not necessarily celebrating a 4th of July with us today, but it's still a nice day. So how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Happy Independence Day to all the Americans out there.
Appreciate it. Thank you. It's, most of the country has some nice weather today, other than some spots on the East Coast that are getting threatened by that tropical storm. So hopefully all of you are able to get out and enjoy the holiday weekend. And it's an interesting night. We had just a few day games, so I kind of expected more of a split slate, but we've still got 10 games tonight, so that's a nice complement of games for a Friday night. And some interesting options on the board, with the Rangers scratching Yu Darvish last night. You've got another ace on the mound today, and there's quite a few of elite options to choose from at pitcher tonight, so let's just dive right into that. You've got Chris Sale, you've got Yu Darvish. I'm sure a lot of people will be on Matt Cain against San Diego tonight. So how are you breaking down your pitchers tonight?
Well, I mean, obviously the top three, Kershaw, Darvish, and Sale, are all in pretty good shape. For me, Sale's the number one guy tonight just because of he's got a great matchup versus Seattle. These guys don't hit lefties very well. I know they come in hot, but still not against Sale. I don't think it continues. And the fact they do strike out quite a bit versus left-handed pitching. And Sale's quite a bit cheaper on every site you're on, other than Draft Street, where they're all pretty much close to the same price. On DraftKings and FanDuel, Sale's quite a bit cheaper too. So I like Sale number one, Darvish number two there. I'm avoiding Kershaw tonight just because of the price and the fact that it is in Coors, although I expect him to pitch well. And if you've seen that Rockies lineup that come out, it doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
You got no Rosario, you got no Tulo. So, I'm not afraid of Kershaw tonight. Just the price steers me a little bit away because I think Sale can be probably just as good. And value-wise, yeah, you got to love Matt Cain if you're playing on a site like FanDuel where he's still available to use at the 6:40 start. You got to love him for value tonight as well, as I think he throws a pretty good game there.
Yeah, the first thing that popped into my mind when I saw that Rockies lineup was that it made Kershaw a little bit more interesting. I think he might make a nice, for one time, being a contrarian pick, I think he might be an okay option for tournaments. As this is probably one of the nights where you're going to get a lower percentage ownership on Kershaw than you would almost every other start over the course of the season, wouldn't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes a great contrarian play. And I think, maybe more so on a site like Draft Street where he's the same price as Sale and Darvish and nobody will be on him. But, on DraftKings or FanDuel, you're paying up for him, so it's going to be expensive. But, I think he still makes a great play tonight, and I don't care where this game is. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go out there and throw 7 shutout innings and strike out 10 Rockies tonight.
Yeah, and, it is Coors Field, so there is the chance that he gives up a long ball or two tonight, but the benefit of that for him is that usually he's not allowing a lot of base runners, so you're not going to see a lot of 2-3-run homers against him. And if he gives up a solo homer or 2 solo homers, it's not going to kill you that much with the chance that he goes out there and throws a really good game. But other than that, if you're playing it safe, especially for cash games, I do like Chris Sale. You mentioned the Mariners' struggles against left-handed pitching. They have a lot of left-handed batters in that lineup. Guys like Cano that are, maybe a little bit worse against left-handers. A lot of their outfielders, their normal starting three in the outfield are all left-handed, and there's nights where they can throw 7-8 left-handed bats out there. And Chris Sale, more so than any other pitcher in the league, just eats up left-handed batters. So, and for on some sites you can get him. I know on FanDuel, Chris Sale is $1,900 cheaper than you, Darvish. If you can get Chris Sale at a substantial discount to Darvish, I really like him number one tonight. Darvish, I think, is an okay play if you want to spend a little bit more, if you have the salary to spend a little bit more. But, if you want to get some of those elite bats tonight, a lot of people will be on the Dodgers bats for sure against Jair Jurgens tonight. I think, saving a little bit of cap space with Chris Sale or even Matt Cain is a decent play. What if you wanted to go cheap? Maybe, let's say, on a three-pitcher site like Draft Street, it's really hard to roster three really good pitchers. Who would you look at? Anybody like on the in the lower tier, I guess, of starting pitching tonight?
Yeah, I mean, what Kane comes to mind on Draft Street, where he's pretty cheap. Oh, actually, sorry, he's not available on Draft Street. My apologies. There's not a whole lot that I love down there. I think Lance Lynn, actually, for your Cardinals, in a pretty good spot tonight. He's much better at home, and this Miami team doesn't hit righties a lot. And at 15 and change, I think probably Lynn is about as low as I would go on that list. As a second or third option there. He's in a pretty good spot there, but I think you definitely got to pay up and get one of them. Much prefer Lynn to a guy like C.J. Wilson or Urban Santana, I think, tonight. They're both in good spots as well, but obviously, Lynn and the Cardinals better than anybody. You liking Lynn tonight?
I do. He's looked really good his last 2 or 3 starts, I would say. I know he had a shutout in there, and he's very streaky. He'll go through stretches where he just doesn't pitch well, but always been a guy that gets a little bit of a leg up at home. The Cardinals did play fairly well the last 2 games against the Giants out in San Francisco, so hopefully they can get some momentum going. I think he's a perfect fit as like a number 2 guy tonight. Those other guys that you kind of mentioned, C.J. Wilson would be a guy that I'd be totally off of tonight. He's been terrible of late, really struggling with his command, so I wouldn't touch him tonight. I think Urban Santana is okay on a site like DraftKings. On DraftKings, Urban Santana is relatively cheap compared to the field, so I don't mind him as a number 2 starter over there. With his advanced metrics, his Ks per 9 and his xFIP and stuff like that are fairly good on the year. His career highs in almost all those categories across the board. So I like Lynn as a mid to low guy. I like Urban Santana as well if you're kind of on DraftKings searching for a number 2 starter, or Draft Street searching for a number 3 starter. But I would agree it's you're probably your best bet on single pitcher sites or on multi-pitcher sites to at least get one of the Darvish, Sale, Kane combo today.
Another guy too that intrigues me a little bit is Renis Elias from Seattle. He's looked pretty good. I know he's been beat up in a couple starts recently, but he's looked really good to me at times. Great control and really fools hitters with his off-speed pitches there and changing speeds. Not the best matchup versus Sale, but this White Sox team doesn't hit lefties very well, and he's pretty cheap everywhere. GPP-wise, maybe I don't love him, but a multi-pitcher site as a third guy, say you would decide to go Sale, Lynn, and Elias on Draft Street, I would like that. So I think in a situation like that, he's in pretty good shape, but don't love him in a GPP just because I don't see the win, I don't see the K upside, even though his price is cheap there. But I think he's a decent spot as a third pitcher. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Vegas kind of agrees with you on that. The White Sox aren't as big of a favorite. I know Dan Bach tweeted it out earlier that he was surprised that the White Sox were only like a -160 favorite as opposed to maybe -180, -200 in this game. I think part of that is Vegas giving some respect to him with the way he's pitched this year. So Chris Sale at home, you would always expect to be a pretty big favorite. I wouldn't use him on a site like FanDuel where the win is such a big factor. But multi-pitcher sites and sites where the win is maybe a little bit less important. Yeah, I think he's a great fit as a lower-end guy. And you could easily see a 2-1 type ball game there in Chicago tonight. So yeah, I think he's pretty good if you're looking for a guy on the cheap.
Yeah, I think the only set where he's not well priced looks like DraftKings here. But what do you think of Yordano Ventura, especially on DraftKings at 6.7? Not the easiest matchup tonight, but 6.7 with his K potential, not a bad idea as a second pitcher maybe.
Yeah, I have him. I actually do have him on a couple of GPP teams tonight paired with Chris Sale. because it still allowed me to get some big bats. And yeah, you mentioned his K upside. I think their algorithm might be factoring in, his last start, he only went 4 innings. That was, don't be fooled by that. That was because of rain. They had about a 2-hour rain delay, and he had to get pulled from the game. So if you look and see that he only went 4 innings in his last start, don't be concerned. There's no injury or anything there. He's been up and down this year, but you mentioned his upside is solid tonight. Tough matchup with the Indians, but definitely for tournaments, I think he's a great fit as a lower-end starter.
Yeah, well, I think that pretty much covers pitcher. If there's anybody you guys wants to talk about in the chat, shoot us up there, and we'll throw them out there. But I think for the most part, that just about covers everybody. Just to recap, I like Sale number 1, and it's mostly due to price overall. Is a little bit cheaper. Darvish number 2, and probably the best value out there if your site's using the San Diego San Fran game is probably Matt Cain.
Yep, we're pretty much on the same page with our pitchers tonight. A few different ways you can go, but getting exposure to one of those higher-end guys probably advised with a good bit of your lineups tonight. So let's move to catcher, a position that it seems like in recent weeks has thinned a little bit. We've had some guys like Evan Gattis dealing with injuries and such, so the position's thinned out a bit, but luckily most of the higher-end guys are still on the board tonight. We didn't have a lot of good catchers in the all-day slate. So who are you liking at catcher this evening?
Yeah, it almost seems like a bunch of catchers all went on fire at the same time and shot up in price, giving us no middle ground there, and it's kind of that way. But obviously Victor Martinez is in play tonight. I like him. Jonathan LaCroix's been on fire. He's in a good spot. But for me, a little bit cheaper, Buster Posey. I mean, this guy's a stud. He's facing a lefty, which means he's always in play, but Eric Stoltz has been smashed all year. Posey has ripped him over his career. I think he's your best play in cash games, and he's a great play in tournaments, too, if you want to spend up a little bit. So it's Posey for me. And GPPs, if you want to mix it up and play a little contrarian, love Miguel Montero tonight. I think he's in a good spot there versus Santana, who does struggle versus lefties and is homer-prone. And Montero, obviously, is he's crushed righties all season. He's got that multi-homer upside he's looking for from a catcher. So a little bit cheaper than Santana as well, than Posey as well. And other than that, there's not a whole lot for me to love at catcher tonight. Couple of punt options. I was talking to some of the guys in the chat earlier. A.J. Ellis is in a pretty good spot. He's cheap. I know he's not a great hitter, but it's a good punt. It's a bat in Coors Field. You can't go wrong. And I don't even hate Tyler Flowers, too, facing the lefty Elias. He's got the splits in his favor there, and he can always run into one once in a while too. But not a whole lot of middle ground to like a catcher tonight. You kind of got to pay up or punt, looks like there, STL.
Yeah, I agree, and especially on sites where Posey's not available to you, makes catcher definitely more interesting. Posey's the guy that I have rostered on FanDuel for sure. I think you're going to see, kind of similar to last night, I think you're going to see a lot of people just gravitate towards A.J. Ellis because, as you mentioned, a bat in Coors Field is a bat in Coors Field. So Ellis is a guy I like, and, a sneaky guy that I looked up a little bit more on. Sal Perez kind of has a reputation as a lefty killer, but if you look at his splits this year, he's hitting about 100 points higher against righties this season, so he's kind of reversed course on that a little bit. Josh Tomlin, not a pitcher you have to be scared of. Obviously, the Royals' offense isn't that great as a whole, but I think bits and pieces of it could be okay tonight. So Sal Perez at a thin position, I think he makes sense. You mentioned Montero, another guy that has the splits in his favor, very good against right-handed pitching. So I think those two guys are kind of the guys I gravitate towards. I think a guy like Lucroy, Mesoraco, Carlos Santana, those kind of guys, if you're on DraftKings, where Santana's catcher eligible, they've all gotten so expensive. I don't think I'm going to go that high at catcher tonight. But otherwise, I would agree. You can go down to a play like Ellis, or you can go down to even a guy like Tyler Flowers if you're looking for a cheaper play. At $3,000, it's a pretty good price tag on him for the upside that he probably has more upside than the other guys down there, like a Gerald Laird, Travis d'Arnaud, who's facing you, Darvish, tonight. So other than that, I mean, it still is kind of a relatively thin / top-heavy position. Not a ton to love there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And as far as the Perez versus Montero goes in that middle range, I would suggest Perez for your cash and Montero for GPPs. Would you be on board with that?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right.
Anybody else? That's about all for me at catcher. So if you don't have anybody else, let's shift to first base.
No, we can move on. It's thin today, like you said. First base-wise, I mean, there's always a lot of talent at first base. You got Miggy in a pretty good situation. He's been hitting the ball better. Jose Abreu obviously been a stud. Joey Votto always in play for me. But a couple of guys I like in the middle tier that'll save you some money tonight. Freddie Freeman in a good spot. He's absolutely owned. John Blake, who he's facing here now. Freeman's
Cole
facing
Mentor.
Mentor, yes. Absolutely owned Cole Mentor. At his best when he's facing a right-handed pitcher in Turner Field. If you look at his career stats, they're much better at home versus righty. So Freeman in a great spot tonight, too. Matt Adams, your boy Matt Adams there, he's in a good spot hitting 3 tonight versus a lefty that really struggles. Evaldi really struggles versus left-handed batters. So I love him tonight as well. But I think the most popular play tonight, and for good reason, is going to be Adrian Gonzalez. He's at a great price across the industry. Jared Jurgens has just been called up from the minors where he's been rocked for a couple of years, especially by left-handed bats. And with Gonzalez's price in Coors Field, I think that's your best bet to go, especially in cash games. Obviously a good fade in GPPs, but I think Gonzalez is number 1. Like I said, I love Freeman and Adams as well. And Mike Morse is a guy that I'm a big fan of today. Don't even mind me your cash games, believe it or not, but I think you're safer going with Gonzalez. But in GPPs, you're playing Kachurian. Mike Morris, again, I think Fandom might be the only site doing the 640 game there, but he's batting 5th today, smashes lefties, at least has for his career. Only faced Stoltz once, but he hit 2 bombs off of him. So I like him for the price you can get him at as well.
Yeah, the Giants have some sick numbers as a whole against Stoltz. We already mentioned Posey, Morse, Pablo Sandoval has great numbers against Stoltz, so they've hit him pretty good. I wouldn't worry about taking some Giants bats on FanDuel where they're available, even though the game's in Petco Park. I think they're in a good spot tonight. So I agree with your analysis there. Certainly agree that Gonzalez, especially on the sites where his prices come down, will be the most popular play tonight. Good spot for Freddie Freeman as well. And Adams is it. The Cardinals lefties make interesting plays. Nathan Eovaldi has some of the most drastic splits between facing left-handed batters and right-handed batters of any pitcher in the league. He is very good against righties, I believe, under a 240 weighted on base against right-handed batters, but 360 or 370 against lefties. So the Cardinals don't have a ton of left-handed bats, but you do have Matt Adams in there, Matt Carpenter leading off. They've got Oscar Taveras in the outfield tonight. I think those guys are interesting plays in the matchup tonight. So Adams, he's 4K on DraftKings. I think that's a pretty good price tag for him. He has home run upside. So I like him kind of as to be one of the most popular plays of the night, along with Adrian Gonzalez. And let's not forget Jose Abreu, a guy who seems to be perpetually under-owned. I know he actually has better stats on the year against righties, but if you're not on board with Elias and his success this year, Jose Abreu is certainly an upside guy, especially for your tournament games.
Yeah, you got to love Abreu, especially in GPPs tonight. Maybe a little too expensive for you to go in your cash games if you're trying to roster an ace, which we recommend. But interesting. What I wondered today when I looked at that matchup, and you mentioned that Abreu has been much better against righties and basically hits home runs off of anybody wants, it seems like. And the better pitcher, the easier it is for him. But Elias and Abreu, I wonder if they faced each other. I couldn't figure it out, couldn't find any BVPs, but hey, these guys both come over here. I'm wondering if they actually know each other, they face each other. I was quite intrigued by wondering a little bit about that. So I'll be tuning in to the White Sox game tonight and seeing just if they've got any feedback when Abreu comes up, because I'd be interested to hear how they've done against each other, if they played in the same team or whatnot.
Yeah, it certainly is possible. So I don't know that myself either. We'll see if that comes to pass tonight. And then, of course, it'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Victor Martinez, 4,400 on DraftKings. DraftKings, for whatever reason, has not bumped up Victor Martinez as high as some other sites have. Back in the lineup last night, looks healthy. I don't see anything wrong with him as far as physically. They gave him 3 or 4 days off. It appears that he's rested and ready to go, and the Tigers kept humming along last night with 8 runs. Fairly tough matchup with Alex Cobb, but 4,400 on Victor Martinez on DraftKings, certainly a nice price tag for a guy with his talent. I believe he averages the second most fantasy points per game at anybody at first base on DraftKings this year, right there behind Abreu. So I think he's in a decent spot. Punting first base, really not a strategy that I would recommend, simply because there are so many solid options there. Eric Hosmer maybe at 3,600. I already mentioned I'm not a big fan of Tomlin, so I think Hosmer would be a okay punt. C.J. Cron, although he's down in the lineup again, I believe hitting 7th again tonight. I think he's okay, a guy that profiles better against left-handed pitching. But Dallas Keuchel, another fairly tough matchup. He's been solid this year. But those are two guys I'd recommend maybe in the middle tier.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And speaking of Dallas Keuchel, wow, I just a guy that I watch pitch and have had trouble believing in. And you watch him pitch, he doesn't really look overpowering. Decent control, mixes his speeds well, and then nobody is hitting this guy. So I do like Cron, but you mentioned too in the 8th spot there, and against a pitcher kind of like Elias, where I just don't really expect the other team to score much off him. So it's an easier fade there. But I know we're not on pitchers, but just real quick, I mean, can we believe in Keuchel? I mean, how is this guy doing this?
Yeah, he's just one of those guys. I think Houston's kind of taken this approach with their young pitchers to pitch to contact, keep the ball down. He's got a very nice sinking fastball. He's not overpowering, but he gets a ton of ground balls, and he's very efficient and has great command. So those factors have just kind of helped him put it all together. And anybody that gets a lot of ground balls has a chance to have success. Obviously, you have your games where a lot of those find their way through, and you just have poor starts. But as a ground ball pitcher, I think he can sustain his success. Maybe not the amazing success that he had. I think it was in May where he had maybe 4 or 5 amazing starts right there in a row. I wouldn't expect to see that kind. I mean, I don't think he's frontline #1 starter potential going forward, but I think he has a chance to settle in maybe as a #2 guy for the Astros for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I think he does profile as a 2 or 3, and I do believe in him. If you look at his batting average against, it's pretty good. I mean, he's dominating versus lefties. He's very good against righties as well. And yeah, you mentioned the month of May where he was insane, but expect the K rate to come down a little bit. But I agree, he probably stays consistent.
Yeah, so not a ton of Angels bats tonight. I respect his performance enough this year to not be targeting them. Other guys are in better spots tonight. So anybody else at first base? Otherwise, you can head on to second there.
Moving on to second base here. D. Gordon, probably be the most popular play again tonight. He's ranked against right-handed pitching this season. Been a lot better by getting on base and OPP-wise on base percentage than I ever expected. So I'm a believer. Jurgens obviously has trouble left-handed bats getting people out. McHenry's catching, not Rosero tonight, which makes me love him even more because McHenry doesn't have the strongest arm, and they should be able to run wild to him tonight. So I expect D. Gordon to be very popular. He's the top guy for me. Jose Altuve is the guy you definitely have to look at. His price is high, but absolutely destroys, well, pretty much anybody, but especially left-handed pitching this year. His numbers are absolutely ridiculous. He's just on fire right now, and he's hit Wilson well. So if you can afford Altuve, I got no problem using him over Gordon. Scooter Gennett's obviously in a good spot tonight again. Not a huge fan for a couple of reasons. That's why I ended up putting him in my GPP article today instead of your cast games, when generally Gennett, solid cast game, play against the righty. Alfredo Simon has been very good, and Gennett's price has really caught up to his production. So he's expensive. He's facing a decent pitcher. I think he's better suited for your GPPs as a contrarian play to a Gordon or Altuve. Kinsler's just been on fire. Don't love the matchup versus Cobb or his price, but worth mentioning there. And there's really not a whole lot of value at second base I found tonight. Kendrick is a lefty killer, as we know, but I think Keuchel pitches well. The only two guys that could really find were Gordon Beckham at a decent price, I thought, versus the lefty. But again, I think Elias is half decent. And Tommy La Stella, I think, is in a pretty good spot. Although for some reason the Braves got him hitting 7th with Simmons in the 2 spot for a while now. I think La Stella is the better option there. But facing the righty comment there, if you're looking for a value/punt play, I don't mind it. But I think tonight is the night you pay up at second base and you try to get, first of all, D. Gordon in your lineup, or even an Altuve if you can afford him.
Yeah, I agree with all that. D. Gordon, you mentioned McHenry catching for the Rockies tonight, another added boost. Those are pretty much all the guys that I am on tonight. I liked La Stella for a while now. They had him leading off for a little bit. They had him batting second for a little bit. It is a bit disappointing that they moved him down. But I don't mind him for that price if you're going to use him. Gordon Beckham's kind of another guy I'd look at in the mid-tier, another guy that you mentioned there. But for sure, far and away, I expect Gordon to be a popular option. If you want to totally punt, at least on DraftKings, Adam Rosales from Texas is batting 7th tonight. He's only 2,600. He is second base and shortstop eligible on DraftKings, so you can use him at second if you want to. Again, you've got a lot of flexibility on DraftKings, as a lot of second basemen are also eligible at other positions. So you could roster D. Gordon at shortstop if you wanted to. But for sure, Gordon's price has come down. He struggled a bit in the month of June, but he's still got that high upside, especially for a guy that doesn't hit for a lot of power because he's basically an automatic steal if he gets on first base. And those steal points are so valuable. 2 points on FanDuel, that's half of a win for a pitcher. 5 points on DraftKings, that's more than a win for a pitcher. So, those stolen bases can add up points in a hurry. I expect D. Gordon to be very popular tonight as well. Really not a lot else in there. Maybe Ben Zobrist. I don't like the price tag on him. But Drew Smyly he had a pretty good start to the year. He's been roughed up of late. I don't really love the Tampa bats just because they've been so inconsistent. But I think you might see some value there tonight in a guy like Zobrist.
Yeah, I don't hate Zobrist in the 2 spot there. And somebody else asked about Kipnis in the chat here. Kipnis has been really disappointing to me. His price is moderate to high on most sites. The power doesn't really seem to be there. I don't even think he's homered since he's come back from the disabled list. He's not stealing bases either. He's got a tough matchup versus Ventura, who he's 1 for 6 against in his career, and it was a single. He's got 2 hits in his last 5 games, both for singles. I'm just not feeling Kipnis, really. I mean, I don't hate it, but I certainly don't like it. And for his price, I don't think that I'm going to bother paying up for him. For a few $100s more on every site, you can get a D. Gordon on a 2-day, or I'd even not mind going down a little lower, for, like we mentioned, a Beckham or La Stella. You're just not getting the production, I don't think, for the price for Kipnis and against Ventura, who's a very good young pitcher. I just think you're better to pass. What are your thoughts on Kipnis?
Yeah, the only site I'd use him, I did notice that on Draft Street with a 100K cap, he was only like 4,400 over there. So, I mean, he was basically down there with the bargain bin guys on Draft Street. That's where I'd use him. I wouldn't use him anywhere else. I agree. I'm somewhat high on Ventura myself. So I could see using him as a GPP play on Draft Street where he's super cheap. I wouldn't touch him anywhere else. FanDuel, DraftKings, I think he's too expensive.
All right, sounds good. Shall we move on to third base?
Sure, let's move to third. And I was just mentioning, those Tampa Bay bats. Evan Longoria has gotten sneaky good against left-handed pitching, as per his career norms. His batting average almost 100 points higher this year against lefties. He's really struggled with right-handed pitching, but he's facing a lefty tonight in Smyly. So is he a guy you're looking at all?
Yeah, you got to love Longoria. His price has come down, like you said, as the numbers against lefties have really gone up, and Smyly, like you mentioned earlier, too, has been hit very hard versus right-handed bats. So love Longoria tonight, especially that in that middle-tier price. It's almost a steal to get him in there with his kind of production. Adrian Beltre, obviously in a very good spot as usual, although, and I've said it for a long time, he's a much better hitter against hard-throwing righties for some reason than these lefties. And Nice's pitched well, pretty big ballpark. The wind was a factor for me this morning, and I know you mentioned that you're not a huge believer and weren't too worried about it, but 22-mile-an-hour winds were coming in. They still show around 18 or 19. That doesn't bother you over a guy like Beltre with those winds blowing in that hard?
It does a little bit. I just think that Citi Field is one of those parks where the design of the park seems to limit the impact that the wind has. You get parks like Wrigley Field where it's a huge factor. I mean, if it's that strong, I think it's a little bit of a factor, but the night game, the winds tend to die down a little bit at night, so I wouldn't. You could use it in a tie-breaking scenario, but I wouldn't fret too much about it. Certainly it's an added bonus to a guy like Darvish, though.
Yeah, and I see
can't hurt.
No, it can't hurt for sure. I just see now I'm updating it here on Daily Baseball Data as the site I'm on now, and it looks like it's down to 14 mile an hour blowing in. So that's obviously a lot less of a concern than 22. So I'm sure they'll update on Roto Gunner's page soon as well because they're showing 19. So Baseball Data pretty accurate their stuff. So 14 miles per hour is a lot better than that, guys. So Beltre definitely in play. I think Matt Carpenter's in a great spot. Again, we mentioned the Cardinals lefties bats are good spots. Carpenter's price has also come down. He's hitting the ball much better. And Evaldi, as we said, really struggles versus lefties. So I love him tonight. Basically, the debate for me in my Caskins was Carpenter versus Longoria. Pablo Sandoval, you mentioned earlier there, STL, that absolutely crushes Stoltz, and the chances of good numbers off him. And there's a few pretty good punt options today. Juan Uribe, again, a bat in Coors Field. He had 3 hits last night. And he's actually had success against Jurgens, although that goes way back. I think he's 5 for 9 with a couple of homers off and something like that. David Freese and Matt Dominguez, I think, are both in good spots facing each other tonight. And Matt Dominguez is becoming a little bit of a lefty killer here. Seems to have a home run in 3 of the last 4 games he's faced lefties in. Your thoughts on some of those guys?
Yeah, I love Dominguez. I mean, I know Beer Makers fan wrote him up or talked about him in his video today. So not going to be any secret that he hits well against left-handers. And David Freese, a guy that's having a very disappointing season, but the last 2 or 3 games, he's really turned it on. I know he hit his 3rd homer of the year the other day and had 2 or 3 hits again last night.
You know what? He's not. Oh, he is in the lineup. Sorry about that, Scott. I didn't think he was in the lineup. My apologies.
He is, right?
Yeah, you know what I did? I went to the Cardinals lineup, like, oh, Freeze isn't there. I thought I saw him earlier. Never mind. Back to the Angels and batting 7th, so I apologize.
He is not in the Cardinals lineup tonight, but
No.
should be in there for the Angels. He's been hitting better the last 4 or 5 games, and I think if you're going on the cheap, you could go with him. I think Dominguez would be the more popular option of the two with the opponent. And again, I mentioned earlier, C.J. Wilson has been struggling a fair bit. His last few starts, he got knocked around by the Royals his last time out. So, but the Cardinals lefties, I mean, Matt Carpenter and Matt Adams would be my 2 favorite options from the Cardinals today. So certainly Carpenter won't break the bank. He's a nice mid-range price on almost every site. I like him. And then Longoria with his numbers against left-handed pitching. Those are the 2 guys I'm on the most. Beltre, the price is a bit high for me on most sites, and if the wind is blowing in there, certainly the tie-breaking scenario would push it to Longoria or Carpenter's favor for me. And if you're not going to spend that much, certainly a guy like Matt Dominguez. So I think we're pretty much on the same page at third base. Punting, you could see Willie Bloomquist in there. He's leading off tonight and think, ooh, Willie Bloomquist is a good punt leading off, but not going there against Chris Sale. I don't think I've taken a bat against Chris Sale all year, and I don't think that's going to happen tonight.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. A couple questions for you here. If you had to pick in cash games, Longoria or Carpenter, pretty much the same price across the board here. Who are you leaning towards out of those 2?
I'd probably lean towards Longoria, but it's really, really close. I just think Longoria has been hitting it so well against lefties lately, and Smiley's just been so poor against right-handed bats. I know the splits on the other side with Uvalde versus Carpenter are the same direction, but I'd probably give Longoria a slight edge. And Carpenter where he's a bit cheaper.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one more guy's asked about Lonnie Chisenhall. Chisenhall to me
the cat likes those Indians bats a little bit better than
Yeah, I think that's Chisenhall's absolutely destroyed right in pitching. We know how good he's been this season. Similar to me in Kitness, only Chisenhall's a little more production. Tough matchup against Ventura. Don't love it. He's fairly highly priced, so it actually is highly priced on all the sites. And I think it's a better GPP play just because you've got to pay up to get him. And it's not a great matchup versus Ventura. So a guy that I'm not really on other than Contrarian. What about you?
Yeah, same thing here. I think he'd be a nice Contrarian GPP option. Helped me out the other night. I had him as a fill-in on the GPP team, and he hit a homer off Josh Beckett. So no problems using him against a righty. I'd probably reserve him for GPP only tonight, though.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, let's move to shortstop. Not a position that, if there was one spot where you could maybe pivot off of the Dodgers bats, because we both agree, D. Gordon, Adrian Gonzalez, I would say, elite options as far as those Dodgers bats in Coors Field tonight. But Hanley Ramirez, for the production that he's had recently and the little injury that he's been dealing with, he's just so expensive.
Yeah, you're not getting the production like you mentioned, and you never know if this guy's going to leave a game, nagging another injury, pulling out for defensive reasons. The Dodgers are up 7-2 in the 5th, and they yank him to rest him. Yeah, not worth his price tag tonight. I mean, unless you're going with a Matt Cain or a different value pitcher where you can load up any bat you want, then Hanley's still your top play here, and I would roll with that. But if you're rolling with an ace out there or a combination of a couple good pitchers, you can't afford Hanley. It's not worth it for me tonight. A guy I do like is Alexei Ramirez. Don't love him again because I expect Elias, or they're calling him, to pitch well. But Ramirez in that middle tier, batting 5th tonight, is in a pretty good spot, I think. But there's a couple of really good punt options out there. I like Sean Rodriguez, as we mentioned a few times, that Smiley's really struggled lately and against right-handed bats. And Rodriguez seems to be that guy that pops up and has that big game versus the lefties this year. And even though his career averages and his numbers aren't that great, Again, yesterday had a big game against left-handed pitching. So batting seventh, I don't love it, but again, it's a punt play. So Rodriguez isn't playing for me there, and also Elvis Andrews. The wind's kind down a little bit, which makes it a little more appealing. Not that Andrews is a guy that's hitting home runs, but you still want him in a pretty good hitting environment if you can. And Jonathan East has been good. Citi Field is a decent pitcher's park, but Elvis Andrews batting two has been decent lately. His price is dirt cheap across the industry. I think he makes a pretty good punt play short if you're not going to pay up for Hanley, which I doubt I will on my cast games. I think both Andrews and Sean Rodriguez are in good spots tonight, STL.
Yeah, I really like Andrus. He's a guy I wrote up in one of my, I don't know if I did it on every site or not, but the sites where he's cheaper. I know I put him in my daily plays column today. A lot of people tend to look past Andrus against the left-handed pitcher because the stolen base potential is a little bit less. Yeah. But if you look at his splits, I mean, he hits about 70 points higher against lefties, and those are really the guys you want to target him against. Certainly in an offense that can put up some runs. They've been hit or miss, but hitting in front of Rios, hitting in front of Beltre, certainly gives him some upside, and I really like him for cheap. I mean, is he still 2,300 or whatever he was on FanDuel?
Yeah, 2,300 on FanDuel tonight.
He's 100 over the minimum for a guy hitting second for a good offense.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, his numbers against lefties are great, and he does have 25 stolen bases versus lefties in the last 3 years. So it's not like he's not stealing against lefties as well. He can steal a bag. Obviously, 6th, 7th inning comes, the righty comes in, he's on base easier. So I agree, Andrews is a great play, and he's actually pretty cheap on every site tonight.
Yeah, really, the only place where he's really somewhat expensive is DraftKings, where he's 3,900, and that doesn't break the bank. I mean, he's still 1,200 cheaper than Hanley there, but he's not as much of a absolute play on DraftKings kind of as he is on some other sites. You know, we mentioned, if you're just tuning in, obviously you probably wouldn't be targeting him against Clayton Kershaw tonight anyway, but Troy Tulowitzki not in the Rockies lineup tonight, so it makes Kershaw a more interesting option if you want to target him for your GPPs. But other than that, shortstop a position that you know, it doesn't have a ton of mid-tier talent, I guess you could say. We talked about Sean Rodriguez, you know, as a low-end play, and then Elvis Andrus as well. Otherwise, the high-end guys, you know, if you want to spend for Hanley Ramirez, I would certainly only do that in a GPP. Is there anybody else at the high end that's worth targeting? I mean, there's really nobody else that sticks out to me. I'm sure we'll have somebody in the chat maybe mention Asdrubal Cabrera, but I don't really love anybody else at the top tonight. I think this is a position where you can save some salary.
Yeah, I agree. The only other guy that I'm kind of looking at is Andrelton Simmons batting that 2 spot.
Yeah.
You know, he's got hits in 4 straight games and back-to-back multi-hit games, so he certainly is producing in that spot. He can steal a base, got a little bit of pop too. So if you're not a big fan of Andrews, it's not much of an uptake to go to Simmons there, and on some sites Simmons is actually cheaper. So yeah, I think Andrelton Simmons is in a pretty good spot there as well. They're both very similar to me, Simmons and Andrews tonight.
Yeah, that about covers the shortstop guys. You know, you get that 4 or 5 guys to choose from tonight, and you know, it is what it is. It's not a deep position. Had guys like Jose Reyes, Jimmy Rollins go off in the early slate, and Tulowitzki not in the lineup tonight, so you're limited in your options.
We got a question here, STL, might as well answer. It's got some outfielders, but we're going there anyway.
Sure.
Let's see here. Raiden Love says Sean Rodriguez and Oscar Taveras, or Alexei Ramirez and Alex Rios.
I think that second option is a little bit safer for cash games, but I love the first pairing for GPPs. You know, Oscar Taveras is a left-handed bat. We mentioned Uvalde's struggles against left-handed batters. He has immense power, showed it off all year in the minors. So, you know, loading him up in a GPP I don't think is a bad move tonight. Obviously, there's the risk that he goes 0 for 4. But, yeah, I can get on board with that first pairing in a GPP for sure.
Yeah, he was asking for a GPP, so I guess that answers it.
Yeah.
I would go the opposite. I would go with Alexei and Rios and both. I think it's a little bit safer. I also love the upside of Ramirez and Rios a little more than I do Rodriguez and Taveras. So either way, it looks like you're in good shape there, and we didn't really help you much by splitting that, did we?
Split your lineups. Run 2 GPP lineups out there and use 1 punt combo in each. If you just can't decide, that's what you got to do.
Especially if it's a cheap one. Yeah. As long as it's not the monster or something like that for the game, you're okay with that. Outfield, I I imagine we're on the same page with a lot of these outfielders. What are you looking at tonight there, STL?
Yeah, I think we see on similar wavelengths. I know we exchanged some emails earlier today. I think you know, a lot of the plays tonight. I think you'll see some fairly high ownership percentages. Guys like Posey, obviously the Dodger bats will be popular tonight. So if you look at a guy like Puig, guy who actually has better splits against righties. He has a 407 weighted on base against right-handed pitching. He's playing in Coors Field tonight against Jurgens, who, I mean, you know, Jair Jurgens had one solid season in the major leagues, and that was 4 years ago. And even that year, he only struck out like 5.4 guys, I believe it was, per 9 innings. It's never been overpowering, and I cannot imagine him playing well in Coors Field. It just sets up like a dumpster fire. So Puig, I think, is my #1 option. Obviously, you have to pay for him. FanDuel is still relatively inexpensive compared to his talent, so I like him tonight, even over a guy like Mike Trout. You know, I think Puig stands alone at the top of the list tonight. The other Dodgers outfielders, you know, it was interesting to see them slot Van Slyke in there against a righty batting 5th. Don't really love that play. He's a guy that has pretty poor splits against right-handed pitching. I think I'd lean towards Ethier if you're going to roster another Dodgers outfielder. But Puig's the one I think you want to make sure you get into your lineup. We just talked about Alex Rios a little bit. I think he's in a nice spot batting 3rd against a left-hander. So I think he's a guy that you could go with tonight. Talked about Oscar Taveras. I think he's an upside option as a left-handed outfield bat for the Cardinals this evening. Those are 4 guys that I have a good amount of exposure to. Obviously, I think Diane Viciedo will be another popular option against the lefty tonight. Hunter Pence on the sites where he's available is actually leading off for the Giants this evening, so I think that gives him a little boost. Those are kind of 5 or 6 of the guys off the top of my head that I think I have the most exposure to. What about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on board with all those guys. Love the Dodger bats, and of course prefer Ethier to Van Slyke. Giving Kemp a rest, I guess, is the reason Van Slyke's in there. So another reason not to like him is possibly getting defensive replacement by Kemp later in the game.
Right.
But, you know, Billy Hamilton, I think, is in a pretty good spot. This kid's been on fire, stealing bases like crazy, too. So I like Billy Hamilton if you can afford him. Jason Hayward, I think, is in a good spot versus commenter today, even though he's 1 for 15. It's one of those BVPs I kind of threw out the window just because the splits match really well, and I think Hayward's in a good spot. Alex Gordon, pretty safe here, cash games. Josh Tomlin is not the same pitcher we saw against Seattle, in my opinion. That's not the kind of pitcher he is. So I think Gordon's in a good spot. And another Tampa Bay bat that I really like is Desmond Jennings tonight. You know, he can hit a home run, steal a base, and obviously against lefties it's a little tougher to steal bases. But, you know, I just think Tampa Bay scores some runs. I think we're on the same page there. He's leading off. He's in a good spot. And as a punt play, I like John Jay tonight. Every once in a while, as you know, STL, he comes up with those big games where he ends up having 3 hits and seems to have a triple and a double and whatnot. He can steal a bag there for you. Batting 7th, I don't love it, but that Cardinals line's pretty deep. He's got Molina and Taveras in front of him, and Evaldi does really struggle. So as a punt outfielder, you could do much worse, I think, than John Jay tonight.
Yeah, I do have a GPP lineup tonight where the Cardinals have 4 left-handed batters in there tonight, so I do have a GPP lineup on FanDuel where I have put the 4 Cardinals left-handed batters in there. Jay's the minimum price on FanDuel, Taveras right there as well. So you put those 2 guys in there, you can get one of the ace pitchers and still fit some of those Dodgers bats in there. So I've done that in a few spots tonight. He's not a guy that's going to hit for a ton of power, but for that price, you know, if the Cardinals get their offense rolling, they scored 7 runs against Madison Bumgarner yesterday, so hopefully that's a good sign for them going forward. There was one other guy that just caught my eye. I do like Desmond Jennings leading off, another guy that you had mentioned. The Arizona outfield, if you want to target bats against Urban Santana, I think the Arizona lefties are okay plays. Ender Inciarte is leading off. He's 2,500 on DraftKings. Had a decent game last night, I believe 10 DraftKings points. And David Peralta batting 2nd is only 3,500 on DraftKings. He had a home run last night. So I think those 2 guys could be in play for cheap if you want to go that route.
And I also like Gerardo Parra. I mean, this is a guy that's been real good all year, hitting the 1 or 2 spot, down to the 6th spot tonight. Not an awful position. He's behind Montero and Prado. You know, he's slowed down recently, but again, you know, Santana struggled versus lefties, and NCRT and Peralta, like STL mentioned, are in good spots. And Parra's the cheapest of them all. He's got a bit of pop. He can steal a bag. He's the minimum price on FanDuel. He's only 3.5 on DraftKings. I think he was 4.8 when I saw him on Draft Street. So extremely cheap across the industry, and I agree. I think Parr's in a good spot with the top two Diamondback bats if you're looking for some value in the outfield, and pretty good contrarian play really too. Not a lot of guys will be on them, and they can certainly chip away at Santana I think tonight.
Yeah, and save you some salary. The Brewers guys are also expensive now. I mean, I'm not on them at all against Simone tonight. I think he's pitched well enough to where the Brewers bats, Braun and Gomez, Chris Davis even, they're all so expensive. I just think you can leave them aside tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And Chris Davis not even in the lineup, which I think is a good move. They got Logan Schaefer in there. So
that shows how much I've looked at targeting Brewers tonight.
And you don't need to. I'm with you. I just noticed it by looking at it right now myself. I haven't looked at that lineup at all either than scanning over it. I mean, obviously Braun and Cargo are studs, Cargo Jr. So, they're always in play in a GPP. You want to go contrarian, throw one of those guys in there. They can both blow up and have a game. But the way Alfredo Simone's pitched, I'd avoid it as well there. Looks like we do have some questions in the chat here if we want to move on from outfield there.
Yeah, go for it.
LaCroix, Mesoraco, just love saying Mesoraco, or Posey.
I think you got to go Posey. I mean, he's such a good matchup tonight. Even though the game's in Petco Park, I think you got to take Posey there.
I agree, and if I was going to go contrarian, I would go Mesoraco over LaCroix tonight. Would you do the same?
Yep, I agree.
All right, Freddie Freeman or Joey Votto? I assume cash games are not really specifying here.
I'll take Freeman. I like that matchup against Colemanter a little better, and I think he's even got a little more upside than Votto anyhow. Votto walks a lot. It hasn't shown much pop this year, and Freeman's been sneaky but pretty good on the season, so I'll take Freeman there.
I agree, and something's not right with Vaughn. I read something earlier about something about his legs grimacing in pain after he's been swinging. They're not giving much details here, but Votto doesn't seem right, and apparently not healthy completely either. So I would stay off Votto so he gets things going and starts the ball with some authority. So I'm definitely on Freeman as well.
Yep, I agree.
A bad knee of some sort is what I'm getting here. So any more questions you're seeing there, STL?
Yeah, if you guys got some more questions, throw them up in the chat. I actually pulled up the Star Street Pick 5 here real quick, so we can go through that here. Really, really interesting Pick 5 tonight, and I believe we've touched on pretty much all of these guys throughout the show. I like what they've done with the first one, just giving you straight up Chris Sale against Yu Darvish. Just in a Pick 5 format, do you still like Sale over Darvish given the fact that there's no salary factor?
That is an excellent question. I'm going to scan the Mets lineup real quick just because with Darvish and I haven't really looked at it tonight. Wow.
They got like 4 lefties in the middle there. It's interesting. Not a lot of big names, but they're throwing some lefties at him.
I think it's still go Sale. You know what? I'm still going to give the edge to Sale.
I will too. I just think it's a good night for him. Seattle just struggles so much against left-handed pitching. Sale at home, where he's throwing up some dominant performances there. I think he gets on track tonight. I like him in that matchup too. So we like Sale over Darvish. The next one, 2 of the top first basemen of the night. We got Miguel Cabrera up against Alex Cobb, and Jose Abreu in that aforementioned White Sox-Mariners game.
I would go with Abreu.
I will too. I like him tonight. Let's see. The third matchup, guys in tougher matchups. You got Ryan Braun against Simone, and we've got Giancarlo Stanton against Lance Lynn.
Man, that's a tough one too. I'm going to go with Stanton.
I will too. That one's a toss-up. I could see myself swaying the other way on that one either. That one's 50-50. That's probably the hardest one of the bunch. The fourth one, 2 guys we both really like at first base, Freddie Freeman and Adrian Gonzalez. I do like Freeman, but you have to go with Gonzalez there, I think. Yeah,
I'm with Gonzalez as well.
All right, and then the last one is Diane Viciedo and Alex Rios.
Viciedo's in a great spot today, but I'm going to take Rios. I just think he's got more upside and just a better player overall.
Yeah, I would agree. And against a lefty, Rios has good splits against left-handers as well. So to recap, we went Sale over Darvish, Abreu over Cabrera, Giancarlo Stanton over Ryan Braun, Adrian Gonzalez over Freddie Freeman, and Alex Rios over Diane Viciedo. So that's what we did for the Star Street Pick 5. Scan the chat real quick. We'll see if we have any more questions. Maybe get off the air a couple of minutes early tonight. I know FanDuel has that 6:40 lock time, so that's just that's 10 minutes after the show ends. So for us to finalize some lineups, we'll get off a couple minutes early tonight. But I'll peek in the chat here real quick and see if we've got any more questions. Is there anything else you see right now?
Yeah, I see Las Vegas Boulevard. Alex Rios or Ethier. I would lean Ether tonight, even though I love Rios. He's probably a bit safer overall. You know, Nices pitched well, ballpark and City Field. I mean, it's Ether against Zergens and Coors. I give the edge to Ether.
I would too. The ballpark and matchup factor. I mean, I think Rios is a better player, but too good of a matchup for those Dodgers bats tonight, I think.
Yeah. Another one here. Let's see here. Both Martinez is from Detroit. What does it say? Peralta
Okay, so
TPP. I'm trying to figure that question out. Does he mean Victor and JD versus Peralta and Puig?
Let's take it. Let's pretend it's that. I'm not sure, but let's pretend. It could be. I like. I don't know. Puig is hard to pass on tonight.
Peralta can't be that expensive. That it doesn't make sense price-wise to me in any site here. But
maybe that's just half of his lineup, and he's asking if we like those 4 guys.
Yeah, I don't hate anybody in that lineup at all. I love Puig. Both Martinez, good spot. Peralta's STL broke down. Those lefties versus Santana is fine, so I don't hate anything there. If that's not what you answered, please rephrase it, and we'll try our best to do so. Gonzalez versus Abreu. If it's cash, I'm on Adrian Gonzalez. If it's GPP, I would go Abreu.
Yeah, same here.
Peralta or Cowgill?
I like Peralta. David Peralta leading off. Batting second for Arizona tonight. Cowgill has been great against lefties, but I trust Dallas Keuchel to keep the Angels limited a little bit tonight.
100% with you. Here's a good one: Jose Abreu or Lonnie Chisenhall. I guess that's a utility spot.
Definitely Abreu there.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Torrey Hunter, Viciedo.
I'll be on Viciedo. I'm not a fan of Hunter. I know he homered last night, but he hasn't done much this year.
No, he's really disappointed. Looks like he's really lost it this year, I think, and I'm on Viciedo as well.
Yeah, and the one guy clarifying, to play all 4 of those guys that we were confused about, yeah, I think that's okay as a combo. So, we're here at 6:25. We're going to hop off a couple minutes early tonight. Remember, if you're playing on FanDuel, your lineup's lock in 15 minutes at 6:40, so make sure you get those in. The other major sites, DraftKings, DraftStreet, the normal 7:05 lock time. So, Pepsi, is great being on with you tonight. Thanks for joining in with us on the Independence Day here in the USA, and I think we're on a lot of the same pages tonight. So good luck with your lineups, and I'll let you sign us off. Good luck tonight, everybody.
Same to you, my friend, and hey, go win some money tonight. Grinders, good luck.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. All right. Let me stop.